Okay, we're officially at 8:30 p.m. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ron. I'm an alcoholic. A couple quick announcements. We have flyers on the back table back there, big books. There's CDs back there from speakers many, many years back. They're available free of charge. Please help yourself to them. And we do donate a lot of big books to institutions. Like I gave out 150 of them in the last 3 months for free. Carry this message behind the walls and to the sick and suffering. And if you'd like to get involved and you'd like to do that every Sunday night, we have a 7 p.m. commitment, and it's an inpatient treatment center. It's pretty powerful stuff to carry a message. There's no requirements. It doesn't matter. Just be willing to come out and share your experience, strength, and hope with the still sick and suffering. And I found it to be very rewarding in my life. And you're all welcome to see us after the meeting. Anyway, our chairperson for today, Miss Carol, let's welcome her in here.
Good evening. My name is Karen. I'm an alcoholic. So good to see everybody. This is a 1-hour speaking meeting that meets every Saturday evening at St. Paul's Lutheran Church, 301 North Main Street at 8 p.m. Food and fellowship at 8:30 p.m. Speaker in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. Food and fellowship starts at 8 p.m. The business meeting for this group meets every Saturday at 7 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. right here. The purpose of this group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teachings of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others may benefit from their message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. Is there anyone new or from out of town that would like to introduce themselves with their first names?
Hi, Bobby, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Bobby, welcome.
I'm Brandon, alcoholic.
Hi, Brandon, welcome. The Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship. Would anyone with working knowledge of the 12 steps and willing to sponsor please raise their hands? Are there any announcements for the good of AA? Teresa?
Hi, I'm Teresa, an alcoholic.
Hi, Teresa.
Feet First Speaker Group, we had to cancel our picnic on Labor Day. However, it's rescheduled for this Monday at 5 o'clock. So Feet First, we're located on Allentown Road in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. Food and fellowship starts at 5 o'clock. There'll be a grill, lots of food, lots of fellowship. So you are welcome with your friends and family. We have a great 1-hour speaker at 8 p.m. So I hope to see all of you here. If you want more info, please see the afternoon.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jess, I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Jess.
District 23, that's where we are right now, is trying to get some more people involved with the Bridging the Gap program. Super easy to get involved with, really, really good way to get into service. Please see me and I'll let you know how to do that. Thanks.
Thank you. We have meeting lists and big books on easy terms. Please see me or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone who can't afford them can put donations in the jar on the table marked Big Book and CD donation. All CDs are available free to charge. I've asked Dana to come up and read the preamble.
Hi, my name's Dana. I'm an alcoholic. Alcohol Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help each other to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And I have asked Jessica to come up and read the steps.
Hi, I'm Jessica. I'm an alcoholic. The AA 12 Steps of Recovery. 1. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all of our affairs.
Okay. The 12th tradition states every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. At this time, I would like to pass the basket. We have no dues or fees. We have expenses. This group provides many services. Your donations cover rent, big books, CDs, events, and workshops, etc. There is absolutely no smoking on church property. Please take a moment to silence all cell phones and limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. Now, I'd like to introduce a speaker, a good friend of the Conscious Contact Speaker Group. Let's all give Andrea of the Foggersville Big Book Study a warm welcome. Woohoo!
Good evening. My name's Andrea. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you to Ron for inviting me to speak here tonight. I have never been to this meeting before. I was talking to one of the gals I sponsor, and I guess she used to come down here with her now husband on a regular basis. So it's always a privilege and honor to be able to speak at a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's always a privilege and honor to be sober today, one day at a time. There are 4 or 5 of us gals in college in Northern California, and we took a big geographic and thought we could get jobs at a ski resort in Colorado and ski a lot, drink a lot, and work a little. We ended up working a lot, drinking a lot, and skiing just a little bit. There was about 5 of us. Only 2 of us are alive. Only 2 of us are alive. One was shot and killed, which kind of enabled me to get into AA. The other one died in a house fire because she was drinking and smoking. The other one committed suicide after her son overdosed. And the one other gal is still alive. You know, so I'm always reminded when I walk into a room of AA and every day that I wake up that I'm grateful that I am sober today. And I've been around long enough that I've seen people go out of AA and not come back in. So I'm so glad that you're all here, and welcome to the new people. This program works. It works if you work it. It's one day at a time. And I'm just so grateful that I made it to the rooms of AA and I've stayed. Just to give you some facts, I'm from Fogelsville, Pennsylvania. That's where I reside. I've been residing here in Pennsylvania for 28 years in June. I'm originally from California, just north of San Francisco. I am 61 years old. I've been married almost 32 years to a man I met when I was 5 years sober. I have a 29-year-old son and a 25-year-old daughter, and none of them ever see me pick up a drink. I walked into the doors of AA when I was 23 years old, and I just celebrated on August 27th, 1984. And it's kind of unbelievable at times to me because I've been sober longer than I drank. I drank from age 15 to 23, but I'm so grateful. I wasn't grateful when I came into AA, but I'm so grateful that I came in now at 23 because of my husband and my children have not seen me drink. When I met my husband and we started dating, I was about 5 years sober, and when we started to get a little bit serious, I gave him a copy of the Big Book. I told him I was a recovered alcoholic. I took him to AA meetings. I was very involved with Icky Paw at the time. in the late 1980s. And so I took him to a big Icky Paw conference in San Francisco. And I explained to him, and he was a little uncomfortable. He didn't know any recovered alcoholics. I explained to him, that I have a disease. It's a physical disease, it's a spiritual disease, it's a mental insanity disease. And I explained to him all about Alcoholics Anonymous. I gave him a copy of the book, and I said, this is my life. And this needs to be my life for the rest of my life, because all of the people that I got sober with in Northern California, they are all still sober, or they died sober. And so I realized by watching, because I'm a watcher, I grew up in kind of a funky family, so, if you grow up in a funky, dysfunctional family, you learn to watch. And one of the ladies I first met in AA said, don't listen to what I say, watch my feet. And I was like, what do you mean watch your feet? And she says, watch what I'm doing, not what I'm saying. And that is held true for me in so many different ways. But anyways, I wanted to explain to him, I said, I usually sponsor women. So there's going to be women calling at different times, maybe during a date. There's going to be women coming in of our house to work the steps. And, it's a Saturday night. My husband's a pilot, so he's usually gone during the week. And I said, well, I've been asked to speak on a Saturday night. When I get asked to do an AA commitment, I always try to say yes, unless there's something serious going on. So, he's like, go. He's always been very supportive. So I'm really, really grateful for that. I grew up in Northern California, just north of San Francisco. Middle-class family in Marin County, and there is alcoholism in my family. I had an aunt and 2 cousins die of alcoholism. I saw my cousins get removed from my aunt's home and live with us one summer. As a child, I could see the emotional and physical effects that alcoholism and an alcoholic family had on my cousins. I wasn't completely clear, but I definitely picked up on it. Kids are like sponges. And so I was a little bit afraid of alcohol from what I learned about it. And I tell you that because, when I first picked up the drink, I was more afraid to drink, because I was afraid what was going to happen. And my first drink was actually, I was in theater for a little while in high school, was actually a punch at the cast party. And I even diluted it with more 7-Up, because I was afraid of how it was going to make me feel. And I had been bullied a little bit when I was in middle school, and so one of the things I learned to do was become a human chameleon. And I really wanted to fit in high school, and so my reason for taking the next drink was so that I could fit in and have friends. And these gals invited me together. One of the gals' husband's parents were out of town, and we went over there, and they had I think it was Annie Boone's farm, Karen, with the screw top? It was like a gallon or something. It was gross. But, they had that, and we drank this really gross wine. It didn't taste good, but all I can say is I put that alcohol in, and it was like, it took the edge off. It just took the edge off. And I always quote this one speaker from the Pacific Group, Johnny H., and I heard him at one of my first conferences, and H&I conference, and he talked about without alcohol he was nothing, and with alcohol he was something, and something was better than nothing. And that just hit me like a brick, because that's what alcohol did for me. It made me feel comfortable, it gave me self-confidence. All of a sudden I had this host of friends, we went to a football game, I felt comfortable flirting with boys, and this was great. And I've heard other speakers, and they start drinking and they black out right away, and they make fools of themselves, and it wasn't like that for me. My drinking was progressive, slowly progressive. And I had a really hard time when I came into AA at such a young age, understanding the nature of alcoholism and really admitting to my innermost self that I was alcoholic, because I didn't have any DUIs. Well, I didn't have a car either, so that helps. But I didn't black out much. I did end up taking other substances that we were told in the 70s and 80s weren't addicting, so that I could keep drinking all night long. So I had all these yets I heard about, that hadn't happened to me, which would make me think I wasn't an alcoholic. But when I did a thorough first step with my sponsor, and I looked at my innermost self that I was alcoholic, I was the only one out of my girlfriends that would stand in front of the local deli and ask strangers to buy up for us at 16. Now in California, you can buy alcohol, anything you want, in a grocery store. So I get dressed up with my Virginia Slim Lights, and go in the store, and I, buy a bunch of alcohol and try and look real mature, and nobody really carded you back then. So I, looking back, I could see the progression of my alcoholism. I also started making decisions on even where to go to college. My mom wanted me to go to more of this Ivy League school, and I had wanted nothing to do with that. And then she took me up this college called Cal State Chico in Northern California, just above Sacramento. And they took us into a dorm that was called the Zoo. And it was like Whitney Hall was like 10 stories up, and the kids were running around, and I didn't realize it was known as a party school. It was rated #1 party school for many, many years. And boy, I said, this is home. So I was even picking my academic future around alcohol. And I was against sororities and fraternities, and one of the gals in my dorm said, all these fraternities do these free parties, and you get free alcohol, and you can meet guys. And I was like, well, that's cool, I'll do that. And they said, there's a sorority that's different than the other ones. They don't pick you, you pick them. And their rush is not tea and crumpets. It's, free alcohol and fraternity guys. I'm like, okay, I'm in. So, I went and I ended up joining this group. My roommate didn't end up joining the group. And, their drink of choice was tequila, and they had no rules in their house. And they were called the Wild Women of Omega Chi. And I was home. I was home. And I had a great time drinking my first couple of years of college. I just did. It was fun, and I was wild and crazy, and, a nickname was, a Wild Thing or Double Trouble, and I just had a great time with my girlfriends. And, and everyone drank like me. At least I thought they drank like me. Not everyone, I found out later. But going along, things started to get worse in my life. And, I'm only in my early 20s. I told you I pulled that geographic. Things were starting to go down south. My academics were going down. I wasn't very motivated. I was starting to stay up all night long. Just to give you an idea, I'd start drinking. Maybe make myself throw up a little bit, throw a piece of bread down my throat, drink some more. My daughter calls it FOMO. We didn't call it FOMO back then, but fear of missing out. So I wanted to keep drinking. My friends lied to me once and took me home from a party because I was so drunk that this guy who is notorious for picking up women and taking advantage of them, they took me home, dropped me off, and went back to the party. And I found out the next morning, and I was mad because I missed out on the party. I didn't think that they were trying to save me, that they were trying to protect me, so I just didn't want to miss out. And that's another reason I picked up another substance, and we're in AA, so I'm going to stick to AA, but I did use other substances. And I found this other substance helped me hit a bottom at a younger age, and it helped me stay up all night long. So it would start out, I planned to have a drink or two, and sometimes I would come home after having a drink or two, but most nights I would go out, and I'd be at all night long. We'd be at line at 7-Eleven before 2 a.m., where we could buy some more alcohol, and we were up all night long. 4 packs of cigarettes, one right after another, one right after the other. And the sun would be coming up, and I'd think, how did I do this again? I did not plan to do this when I went out. How did I do this again? And who are these people are with, and, all these things. And so I thought my friends were moving to Colorado. They're dropping out of college mid-semester. My parents were not happy about this. And I'm like, yeah, I'll get in the car and drive to Colorado with you, see if we can get jobs. And so those several friends and I moved out there, and that was my first big geographic. Again, thinking, and I never heard the word geographic till I moved here, thinking if I change my location, right, that things will be different. And things were different, and then things got worse. And I got worse and worse and worse. I decided after that to go back to school. I didn't want to waitress the rest of my life. I didn't want to work 17-hour days to live in this, fancy ski town. And I went back to college. And I did well in school. I held like a B average. I was a communications major and a minor in psychology, and it was interesting. Years after I got sober, I was going through some old paperwork, and I was taking this psychology class, and we had to keep a journal. And I was looking through the journal, and the teacher was underlining alcohol. All the stuff about alcohol and feeling depressed and ashamed, and I didn't want to drink it. I'm like, I don't even remember writing this. So even then, I was picking up on it. there was a guy named Tom, and he had overdosed and almost died, and I heard that he had gotten sober and that he was going to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous when I came back my junior year, and we had been partying together since we were freshmen, and so I watched him, and then if he'd show up at some parties, I would make sure I stayed away from him, because I think unconsciously I knew that he knew that I was the same as him, and I didn't want him to see me drunk. And his roommate was my roommate's boyfriend. So one night, I always bring this up because I didn't remember any conversations from the night. My girlfriend and I were drunk, we were riding our bikes around, she was spying on her boyfriend because she thought he was cheating on her, and so we went to their house, their apartment, and Tom was in there and he was studying for some test, and the only conversation I remember that night is I went up, I sat down in his room and I said, "Hi," and he knew I was drunk, and I said, "Tom, how did you quit drinking?" And he said, "The hardest thing I ever did was to go to Alcoholics Anonymous, but it was the best thing I ever did." And that's the only piece of conversation that I remember from that night. And I just kind of tucked it in the back of my head. Things were going downhill again. I had been up all night long. I was a bartender at that point. My younger sister was up there. I needed someone to open. It was like a bar and grill to open the place at 10 in the morning. I had been up all night long again. And I showed up at my sister's apartment at like 6 in the morning on my bike. And she looked at me and she said, "You've been up all night long again." And she said, "You make me sick." She said, "Get out of my apartment." And I was like riding this bike around Chico, 6 in the morning, nobody's awake. And I thought, what is going on? What is going on? I'm having to look at myself, for the first time. My little sister who looks up to me is telling me that I'm disgusting her. And so one more time, I pulled one more geographic. I'm going to move home with Mom and Dad for the summer. Because every summer I'd stayed up at school so I could party. I'm going to get a full-time job, not at a bar, at a newspaper. Things are going to be different. Well, the first week I'm back in town, my old high school friend said, "Hey, let's go out, to these bars." I said, "Well, I'm not doing this other substance anymore, and I'm just going to drink a little bit and come home." The next day at 6 in the morning, the sun's coming up. I found some other people that partied like me. I showed up at my other girlfriend's house the next morning, banging on her front door that I'd been out with the night before, asking for more alcohol and ripping it out of the refrigerator and drinking it out of the bottle. And she said, "Andrea, don't you think you have a problem?" So there's number 2. And I'm so grateful today for people that told me the truth. So I started going to another recovery program that was brand new in 1984. And I would go once a week on Fridays, and I would go out drinking afterwards because I wanted to prove that I was not alcoholic. I didn't want to take away the one thing that made me feel okay. I could not imagine life without alcohol. Like, what do you do for fun? And so this other gal in the fellowship said, you really should quit alcohol too. I quit that substance and I quit smoking. I took up jogging, when I worked full time and everything. And toward the beginning of that summer, my one girlfriend was shot and killed down in Southern California. And that was a wake-up call for me. That was a big wake-up call for me. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong guy, and left a 9-month-old baby. And I was devastated. We were devastated that summer. And that was the first time I really ever prayed to a higher power. I don't understand why did this happen? Why? I still controlled my drinking pretty good for those two months that summer. And then I went to visit another friend in Southern California, and I was going to stop by and see her husband and her in-laws. And the first night we get down there to Southern California, we're going to this bachelorette party, and I didn't really know the women. They were super attractive. They were super rich. I had $200 for the night, $200 for the week. They had $200 for the night. We're in this limo. I don't really know any of them except for my girlfriend from college. And we go into this place where the bachelorette party is, this type of bar, and the drinks are expensive. I don't want to spend that much for alcohol. So a good alcoholic mind, I thought, all the limo drivers are in the parking lot. We have free alcohol in the limo. So I went back to the parking lot. I'm not going to spend money on drinks so I could drink for free. So I spent the rest of the evening partying with the limo drivers. And ended up making a fool of myself by the time she comes out with her friends. But luckily, her brother was 2 years sober in Alcoholics Anonymous in Laguna Niguel Beach in Southern California, and he saw how hungover and how humiliated and how embarrassed I was the next morning. And he said, I know you're going to these other meetings, but you want to come to a meeting of AA with me. I was like, okay, I guess it's the same thing. So I went, and I heard this speaker. It was a big meeting. It was in Laguna Beach. There was probably like 200-300 people there, and this lady told my story. Only she went like 10 years beyond where I was. I was 23 years old, and I identified, and I identified, and I identified, and I got to hear where I could end up, you know, and I'd already lost one friend, you know, to alcoholism at this point. And then he took me to another meeting. It was a Friday night young people's meeting. And there was all these kids my age, you know, sober. And I was like, wow. And so a week or two later, I go back up north, and I go back to finish my last semester in college. I had to do an extra semester because I dropped out to move to Colorado for that geographic. And I walked into my first room of Alcoholics Anonymous as an alcoholic. It was this divey little motel way at the other end of town, and I didn't have a car. And we had, you know, here the old timers, I guess I consider it an old timer now, which is hilarious to me. We had to wash the ashtrays, the glass ashtrays and the coffee cups. We had the kitchen in the back. And I walked in and I raised my hand as an alcoholic. And all the women came up to me after the meeting. And they all surrounded me, and they all gave me their phone numbers. And they said, if you don't have a car, we'll give you rides. And he'd give us a call every day. And they said, and stay away from that guy, and that guy, because they come after new women. I was like, okay, thanks. Anyway, there was 2 women my age that were sober, and they gave me rides to meetings all the time. I went to tons of meetings, sometimes twice a day. I still had a reservation that I really wasn't that bad. Some old timer there told me, I spilled more alcohol than you ever drank, you know, and I thought, well, maybe I have this other addiction, but maybe I'm really not an alcoholic. So I sat in the rooms of AA for 4 months, saying I'm an alcoholic, but inside I'm not really 100% sure. I really hadn't taken that first step up there. And I was hanging out in a bar, 4 months sober. It was, you know, the end of graduation. It was a bar I always went to, and I'm in there, and people are handing me drinks, and I'm standing there, and I'm like, oh my gosh, if I stay here, I'm gonna pick up a drink. And I told my friend that was like a big brother to me, I'd known for 4 years, I said, Bill, can you take me to the coffee shop? The recovered alcoholics are in the coffee shop. And he said, let me finish my beer. And I said, I don't have time for that, I will walk. And this was not a great area to walk in. And luckily, he cared about me enough, he put his beer down and drove me to the coffee shop. And I realized at 4 months sober, with no steps under my belt and no higher power, I had no business hanging out in a bar with a bunch of people getting drunk. And I graduated, moved home with Mom and Dad, who were lucky enough to let me move back home. Got a job, saved some money to get a car, and I dove into Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, the Bay Area had a much bigger fellowship than little town in Chico, and there was lots of young people. I hadn't found a sponsor. I kept asking people. It just didn't work out for various reasons. And I got suicidal. You know, the big book talks about being at that jumping off place where you're not happy sober and you're not happy drunk. Like, what do you do? And so for the first time, I got down on my knees and I said, if there's a higher power, please help me find a sponsor. Please put someone in my pathway to give me guidance and direction. And I always say, be careful what you pray for, because you'll get it. And, you know, I knew I had to keep going to meetings. Like, that had been drilled into my head. So I showed up to another meeting. It was Sunday Night Ross at this hospital. And I stood in the back, and I looked all forlorn. And, you know, this lady came up to me afterwards, and she said, my name's Barbara. Would you like to go to coffee? And I said, I would love to. And I later found out her nickname was Big Barbara. And, you know, guidance and direction, it was like, but I felt like she was my answered prayer, you know, and she was the first person that cared enough to sit down with me at the coffee table. This restaurant in Northern California called Zim's. It was open 24 hours. And she took me through the big book, you know, paragraph by paragraph, step by step. And she taught me, you know, you need to go to meetings. You need to get a home group. You need to get a commitment. You need to get a group of women, a support group, a network of women. You know, she laid down the foundation of how to stay sober with me. I gave her a bouquet of flowers after 1 or 2 times after we got together, and she said, "I don't want your flowers." And I was like, really? Took it personally. What do you mean you don't want my flowers? And she said, "I want you to pass this on. You know, what was freely given to me, I'm freely giving to you. I don't want gifts. I want you to give this to some other woman. You know, as soon as you get your own car," you know, she says, "I'm not charging you for gas." She goes, "You take some newcomer, you know, and you drive them around." And so those were some really good lessons. I was, I don't know if I blew her off or was late once or something, and she said, "My time is valuable. When you make a commitment, you keep a commitment no matter what. And I'm happy to meet with you, but you can't blow me off like that. You know, you need to let me know if you're going to be late." So she taught me the basics of life. Even though I was raised in I think a pretty decent family, you know, I was selfish and self-centered. I didn't know any better. So I'm so grateful that she taught me all these basic things for AA and getting sober and basically being a good human being, being responsible for the first time in my life, because I didn't care what other people thought. I didn't care what I did. It was all about me. So she took me through the 12 steps, as outlined right here. And I was worried about doing the 4th step. I was worried about the 3rd step. I used my deceased best friend as my higher power. I talked to Deanna. I was afraid of God because my parents were atheists and they warned me about people passing out carnations and the shaved heads in San Francisco, and I didn't want to become a whatever. And I don't like to say anything because everyone has their different views on religion and spirituality, but I was really afraid of that, and she explained to me that it's a decision to go on with the rest of the steps, you know. And when we went through the big book, and this was an example another sponsor gave me years later, to start at the end of the ABCs to the 3rd step prayer and read it out loud in the I form, and that's really, 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 really powerful. And to looking that my selfishness, I could be selfish in ways if I want to get things. One of the things I do with my husband, and he points this out to me, if I want him to get something for me, if he's across the room and he's up, whoever's up, the other person gets something for them or whatever. But I always say real quick. Can you get that for me real quick? Like it's easier for him if I use the word real quick. Well, that's manipulation, right? So, you know, all these things I got to see in my 4th step. And so when I see these defects of character, then I can ask a higher power to change them. You know, I can work on becoming the person that God wants me to be. And you know, the whole idea of step 3, looking at all the selfishness, that I can be kind and considerate and even self-serving just to get my way. Or I can be mean and pushy and, you know, irritable just to get my way. And that this program is about becoming unselfish and helping other people, and that was completely new thinking for me. I was afraid of doing the 4th step because I thought it would change me too much. I heard a speaker years ago, Karen and I got to go on a couple of retreats with him, Don P. from Colorado, and he, I just lost my train of thought. Oh, in terms of thinking of God, he said, they asked Michelangelo how he created the statue of David. And he said he took the big piece of marble. If anyone's ever been to Italy and seen the statue of David, it's like amazing. And he said he cut away everything that didn't look like David, and David was left. And my sponsor said, you're like a diamond in the rough that way. The steps are like cutting away everything that isn't Andrea. And then what is left is what's meant to be. I did a 5th step. I was worried my sponsor was going to not like me after hearing some of the things in there. She almost fell asleep. So I started to feel like I fit into AA more after I did my 5th step, though. You know, I started to feel more a part of, you know, it talks about in the big book about that's the beginning of having the spiritual awakening. You know, people always talk about, well, you know, I want to have the spiritual awakening in step 3, and it doesn't say that. It says, you know, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, meaning I have to take the first 11 first before I have the spiritual awakening. And I have to keep doing things daily to keep where I am spiritually. We were just reading that in our big book study the other night, working with others, you know, when they're talking about going out in places where there's drinking. If I'm not in fit spiritual condition, you know, I don't have any business there. I need to help another alcoholic. If I am in fit spiritual condition, I can go anywhere and not pick up a drink. I got to the 9th step, and that was scary because I felt some people owed me more amends than I owed them. And I watched, again, my sponsor's boyfriend was sponsoring someone, and we were kind of at the coffee table sometimes together after meetings, and he didn't want to do his amends, and he stopped. And he stopped going to AA, and he went back out, and years later I saw him on the street as a homeless person. Again, it's like, how willing are you to stay sober? I don't want to drink again. I'm an all or nothing type of girl. So if I'm going to go for it, I'm not going to go for one. I'm going to go for the whole big shebang. I want the big party. So I was afraid. And that's part of the reason I started working the steps, because I didn't want to drink anymore. I was afraid of living the life I was living, and I wanted to feel better. I didn't just want to be dry in AA. I wanted to feel good. And I started making amends, and some of them were hard and some of them were easier. And there's another one I always tell. There was 3 of us that were really close in college. They called this Charlie's Angels, and one of the gals was a gal that was shot, and Mariana ended up later going to Al-Anon. But we had gotten in this huge fight. She'd written me this horrible letter. This is pre-email, and I burned it, and we hadn't spoken for over a year and a half, and I had to make amends to her, and I felt like she'd hurt me more. But the big book says, doesn't matter, you got to do it if you want to stay sober. So I call her mom, and her mom hangs up on me. So I'm not sure where she lives in the county anymore. So I call my sponsor, feeling sorry for myself, and she doesn't feel sorry for me. She basically hangs up and tells me to get on my knees and pray. So my prayer to God was this, and I sometimes swear at God and say, why is this going on? But my God loves me no matter what. So I said, I don't want to make amends to this woman. If you really want me to make amends to her, put her in front of my pathway, or in front of my face. So the next day she came in, I worked for a newspaper, she came in, she passed the receptionist, she came around to my desk and stood in front of my face and said, hi, Andrea. And I was like, oh my God. And I told my boss, I'm like, can I take a cigarette break? And so I ran outside and I said, look, I really need to talk to you. I have lunch in like 15 minutes. Can you meet me down at the train depot, the park down there? And she said, sure. And I was like flipping out. I was like, oh my God, what do I do now? And like, we didn't have cell phones, so I couldn't like call my sponsor. I couldn't like text, I had to go to God. So I went down to the park, and I'd already realized how I needed, what I owed amends to her for. And so I just prayed, and I'm making amends to her, and one of my AA friends comes up, and she saw me at the park there, she goes, hey, can I have a cigarette? And I'm like, I'm making amends here. And so I hand her like 4 cigarettes, and like, oh, sorry, so she leaves. So I make amends to my friend. Eventually our friendship starts to heal. She was actually in my wedding. We talk on the phone once a month still. She lives in Portland, Oregon. And she told me later it wasn't the verbal amends I made. It was the fact that I gave that gal 4 cigarettes. I go, what? She realized I had changed. What? She says, do you remember the time we're at the graduate bar and that guy was from out of town and he really wanted a cigarette and you wouldn't give him a cigarette, and so he offered you $20, so you took the $20 and then gave him a cigarette. You didn't tell him there's a cigarette machine around the corner by the bathroom. I'm like, yeah, well, $20? That's, 20 pitchers of beer for me and my friends. What, are you crazy? And she said, well, that was pretty selfish. She goes, when I saw you give that gal 4 cigarettes, I realized you had changed. So you just don't know what you're doing or what you're saying when you're being the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. You're being the message that Alcoholics Anonymous works if you work it. So I thought I finished all my amends. I started with 10, 11, 12. I was 9 months sober when I started sponsoring my first gal. She was 40, I was 24. I didn't think I could sponsor someone that was older than me. I was insecure. My sponsor says, you have your experience, strength, and hope with the steps. She doesn't have that. It doesn't matter what age you are. It doesn't matter where you came from. It doesn't matter any of that. And she was my first gal I sponsored, and I took her through the 12 steps. And to me, the 2 places I get the biggest highs from in AA is making amends, unbelievably so, and sponsoring other women. That has been one of the biggest gifts in my life. To see that this program has worked for me, and then to put someone on my couch and go through the 12 steps in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, watch them write inventory, watch their lives change. There's a gal I started sponsoring 7 years ago. She's part of our ladies group. She just moved to Lancaster. was a mess. I watched her get her life together. She started working at a daycare. Then she ended up teaching school. Then she ended up becoming the best kindergarten teacher in her school. She got married. She had a baby 15 months ago, and she asked me to babysit once a week when she went back to school. Her little son is like a grandson to me. I just absolutely love him. I love her. To me, it's like that's one of the gifts of AA. I used to think that love was like romantic love, high hormones. I mean, come on, that's what it was. But, I remember reading in one of Emmett Fox's books saying that service is love in action. When you really find true unconditional love, and I found that in the rooms of AA, in terms of giving back to another person, watching their life change, that is pure joy. That is pure joy. Especially when you've buried numerous friends, especially when you've buried numerous relatives, and you see the seriousness and the fatality of this disease. I had a lot of energy in my 20s, and I loved to dance, and I didn't want to dance in bars, and I wanted to be involved with service, and there was an Ikipa group in the San Francisco Bay Area, and they were trying to get the conference in San Francisco. So I was on the Ikipa Big Committee for like 4 years. So they finally get the conference a year. I get married and move out of town, but I came back for it with my husband. And that was so good for me because I got involved with service. I got involved with traditions. I got involved with putting on AA speaker meetings and dances. We'd throw us in a bunch of cars and drive up and down the coast to California to, Acupaw conferences. One of my home conferences was a young people's conference in Monterey, California. I went to every year. One of my financial amends I couldn't pay. I couldn't reach the person. I couldn't find the person. We didn't have social media back then. So I put some money in an account. And there was a gal I was sponsoring that was a single mom. Her husband had overdosed and died. And so she really wanted to go to a conference but didn't have the money. But her dad would be willing to watch her son. So I paid for her to come to the AA conference with me. And her food, the registration, the hotel, the conference, everything. So it was another way for me to make amends and help another alcoholic since I couldn't reach that person. I was, I guess it was 1990. My husband and I got married in 1990. We moved to New Jersey. We were in New Jersey for 1.5 years. We moved to Colorado. We were in Colorado for 3.5 years, and we moved out in just west of Allentown. Fogelsville means city of birds. I'm like, I'm a San Francisco girl living in Fogelsville? People can't even say it right, Fogelsville. But the fellowship you crave will grow up about you. I moved to New Jersey. This is in the early 90s. I couldn't find anybody back then. I couldn't find any big book study meetings. I did go to the Red Bank group. I think it was like on Monday nights. And then we lived in Colorado for a couple of years. I instantly made friends there in the fellowship in the Boulder, Colorado area. Then I moved out here. There was no big book study meetings west of Bethlehem. When I moved here, I looked for all the big book study meetings, tradition meetings, step study meetings, because I knew I would find solid sobriety there that was based in solution. And I met this guy, Rhubarb Jim, who's no longer with us, unfortunately, and he had a meeting in Bethlehem, and we ended up buying a house out in Fogelsville. So I thought, well, maybe I could start a meeting. And I tried starting a meeting like this in New Jersey, and I tried starting a meeting like this in Colorado, and it just didn't fly. And so I thought, I need to find some other people. I'm this new gal in town. I don't want people thinking I'm coming to town trying to change things. And anyway, so I ended up running into a guy I knew from Ikipa. He used to live in a different state, and he was living in Allentown. I ran into him at the 12 and 12 meeting, and I was like, oh my God, what do you do? And he goes, I moved here. I said, so do I. I said, hey, you want to start a big book study meeting? And he goes, yeah. So my husband's a pilot. He travels. I had a 1.5-year-old. I was going to have to get a babysitter if he wasn't home on Wednesday nights. And he said, there's a new gal that lives up the street from you, and she goes to the Tuesday meeting. Go find her. She could be our coffee maker. And then there was another guy, Todd, and so 4 of us started the Fogelsville Big Book Study meeting 1995, right? Yeah, because my son was born in 93. So October 25th, we're coming up on our anniversary. And we started out with 4 of us, and we were up to almost like 50 people until COVID hit. So I got involved here in the Lehigh Valley. I have a sponsor. My sponsor relocated to the Bend, Oregon area, so we Zoom. Thank goodness for Zoom. That's the silver lining of COVID. So we Zoom all the time, and I'm sponsored. I have sponsees that I sponsor, women that I work with, women that I've known for years. I'm a treasurer commitment at my group. I'm involved with service that way. I've been intergroup. I think I've done everything but GSR. I just don't really want to do GSR, but I'm sorry. That's just my being honest. And I'd have to miss my home group. And I've also got involved with a women's Zoom meeting that's Monday through Friday. It's a fantastic meeting from 10:30 to 11:30 that I was introduced to during the height of COVID, and I'm now technical. I'm a trained person, and I tech the meeting once a week. So that's been really cool because I've gotten to be really good friends with women from all over the East Coast that come to this meeting. So it's pretty awesome. Life isn't always easy. I've been sober, since I was 23. I'm 61. Things have gone up and down in my life. I lost my dad. My mom is not the easiest person to deal with. I got long-haul COVID, which was pretty bad for almost 7 months. It affected me in numerous ways. There was times I would get off the Zoom AA meetings and just cry because I didn't feel connected to God. I didn't feel connected to the meetings. I was scared, but I kept showing up, even though it was on Zoom. It was so drilled into me. The foundation I feel like I'm so blessed with the foundation that was laid out to me in California AA, about staying close to the meetings, praying for God. Even though you don't feel connected to God, you keep showing up. And for a while there, all the gals that I've been helping, they had to help me. They showed up at my house. They helped me. They took care of me until I could get some outside help and get well again. And that was a terrifying time for me, my friends, my whole family, because it just affected me in such a horrible way for such a long time. But I didn't give up going to AA. I kept my connections. And I think that's been someone asked me earlier what the secret was for staying sober this long. And part of the biggest thing whenever I'm at a meeting and I have to talk about a subject, I always bring up willingness, because I don't always want to do things. I don't always want to go out on a Saturday night and drive an hour each way. I'm getting older now. It's like, this is late at night for me by the time I get home and everything. Karen and I were laughing, and it's like, oh my God, we're in our 60s now. And although I don't feel like it in some ways, but it's like, it's important for me to carry the message to the new person or the old person. You can be sober a long time in AA too and feel like drinking. You can hit emotional bottom in sobriety. I was 17 years sober, and I was feeling irritable, restless, and discontent again. My husband and I were having some issues. We started going to marital counseling. I signed up for this retreat in New Jersey with Joe Hawk, and it was on the 11th step, and we couldn't talk to anyone unless we were in one room. And then he brought up in the beginning of the session, does anyone have any unfinished amends? I'm like, unfinished amends? I've been sober all this time, and I made all my amends, and I'm this and then that. And that whole weekend we had to be quiet. We couldn't talk to our roommate. We couldn't talk when we were eating. We could only talk in that room. And it was so great because he had us go back in and do the steps again, a little bit deeper. And he said to us, what's your current agnosticism? I go, what are you talking about? And he goes, where are you trying to run the show again, Andrea? What's your current agnosticism? Go back to step 3. And I was like, and that weekend I realized about an unfinished amends I wasn't even consciously aware of to an old boyfriend. And that issue was a similar issue to what was going on in my life and my marriage at that time. And it was like, wow. It was like, wow. I did an inventory some years ago with my sponsor, and I had I won't get into names, but I had a politician on there that I didn't like, and she says, write it down. I'm like, well, this is stupid. This person doesn't know who I am. This is like, I don't know, 10 years ago. This person doesn't know who I am, so I'm not going to owe him amends. I didn't do anything to hurt him. I don't understand the point of this. And as I'm doing my fifth step with her at her home, it dawns on me that my husband voted for this person and I didn't, and every time this person did something, I would get mad at my husband. And I was like, oh my God, I don't owe this politician amends, I owe my husband an amends. So that, again, you know, Chuck C talks about uncover, discover, discard. It's a constant uncovering and discarding things that don't work for me. I want to be the best version of Andrea that God wants me to be. And I'm not perfect, and I make mistakes, and I lose my temper, and, you know, but I have these spiritual kind of tools here for me to do my evening review every night and look, you know, where have I been selfish, dishonest, fearful, and dishonesty changes too. You know, for a while it was like I would go shopping, I paid off all the credit cards, and like, you know, I'd buy stuff and not tell my husband. Well, that's dishonest. You know, it's dishonest. You know, we have to figure out the budget together. You know, so it's like the path gets narrower the longer that you're sober, which is a good thing. It's a good thing. But I always like to bring that up because sometimes people with long-term sobriety, you know, when they wrote the big book, they weren't sober very long. You know, I think when it was Bill like 5 years sober or something when he wrote the 12 and 12. I'm not a great historian, but you know, there's a lot of people with long-term sobriety now, and I used to go to a lot of conferences. I love to go to retreats. I prefer the smaller retreats now. Karen and I and a bunch of gals from our home group go to the Jersey Shore retreat usually in June, and I find that really rewarding. I always want to stay sober. I want to stay honest. I want to help other people, especially after like going through the long haul COVID. I wake up every morning grateful. I am so grateful that I'm sober today. I'm so grateful that I'm alive today. 4 of my friends have lost their spouses in the last year. My next door neighbor's husband was hit and killed on his bicycle, but hit and run, leaving 3 kids. Another friend of mine's husband just died of cancer in the neighborhood 2 weeks ago. A close friend of Karen and ours husband died of cancer a year ago. Another friend of mine whose husband I 12-stepped into AA, he died of a heart attack last year. We don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. We don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. So, you know, we have to do this one day at a time. All I have is today. You know, I have a set of tools that are going to help me look at myself on a daily basis. It's important I stay in touch with other alcoholics. It's important that I go to meetings. When I first came to AA, I'm like, I don't want to go to meetings the rest of my life. You know, now I look forward to meetings. I got to go to the International Women's Conference in Santa Fe, New Mexico. They had a bunch of cancellations because of COVID, and I had never been to an International Women's Conference before. And some of my friends from California were there, and a couple of my friends were here, and one of my friends that she had gotten sober from Jersey who lives out in Arizona was there, and it was just so awesome. It was so awesome. The other neat thing is the guy that helped me start the Focusville Big Book group, Todd, his wife, we were really close to, she died of cancer 8 years ago. And she started a woman's potluck that we used to have every month for years. So they moved to New Mexico. And at the end of the conference, I got to meet up with her husband, who's still sober. And he's got a new girlfriend and everything, but we got to, you know, reminisce about the old times starting the Focusville Big Book Study Group. And, you know, he went through hell after losing Kelly to cancer. And Kelly fought and fought and fought and fought. And, but she didn't pick up a drink. She didn't pick up a drink. She stayed close to AA. A couple of us went out to say goodbye to her. She had an AA get-together at her house, you know, a month before she died. She took us to an AA Super Bowl party when we were there that weekend. And, you know, this program is amazing. It's beautiful. It works. If you're scared, ask for help, whether you're 5 days sober or 30 years sober. You know, we're all just humans. There's no... You know, what do they say? It says in the book, we can never talk down to an alcoholic from a spiritual height. You know, we're all drunks trying to get sober. We're all human. It's one day at a time. And, you know, I'm so grateful that I came in here willing, and I'm blessed. And, you know, the most important thing I can do to show my thanks and my gratitude is to reach out my hand and help another alcoholic. So God bless you all. Thanks. Can I read something quickly? There's 2 things I wanted to read. Dr. Bob's my favorite because I've always wanted to be more quiet, and that's just not my personality. My sponsor says that's just the way you are. So, but I love it when he says, I spend a great deal of time passing on what I learned to others who want it and need it badly. I do it for 4 reasons. 1, it is a sense of duty. 2, it is a pleasure. 3, because in doing so, I'm paying my debt to the man who took time to pass it on to me. 4, because every time I do it, I take out a little more insurance for myself against a possible slip. And my favorite thing to end a meeting with is, our book is meant to be suggested only. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask God in your morning meditation what you can do for the man or woman who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order. But obviously you cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with God is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This is the great fact for us. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you shall surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. God bless you and keep you until then. And if you look up trudging, it's not skipping. Life's hard sometimes, so keep coming back.
Good evening, I'm Teresa, I'm an alcoholic. Let's give Andrea another round of applause. We also need to thank our chairman, Andrew, and our coffee maker, Howard. Tonight, just the chairs in the front are going to go away. A few housekeeping items, a reminder that Food and Fellowship, we're here every week at 7 o'clock. Don't forget the meeting before the meeting and after the meeting. We're greeting here every week at 8 o'clock. Door prizes at 8 o'clock as well, speaker at 8:30. This group, we have a Facebook page. On the Facebook page, there's lots of announcements on there about meetings in the area and Zoom meetings around the world. We also have a YouTube page. There's lots of speakers on our YouTube page, so go to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group YouTube and Facebook page, and we will see you there. We have some other meetings. Monday, there's a meeting here at 6 o'clock. It's a 12 and 12 meeting. There's an Al-Anon meeting here at 7:30. And then we also have a sister group that meets 7:30s at Salem Church. It's a line-by-line big book study on Thursday nights at 7:30. Our speakers, they come here of their own time and expense. It's customary that we form a line and thank them after the meeting. And with that being said, we have a nice way closing. Our Father,